Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Hey Nonprofits Raise More Money. Before we get into the episode, just a quick reminder, we've got the Hey Nonprofits Raise More Money YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe, share it with folks in your network. Also, go to LinkedIn, check out our Hey Nonprofits Raise More Money page. Give us a follow, show us some love. It would mean the world to us if you did. Thanks so much for tuning in. Jason and I today are talking about some really cool things that you should consider when planning and procuring auction items for your event. We're in that space. We're talking to folks about their events on a daily basis, over 1,000 events a year, as a matter of fact. So we get a lot of data. So hope you get a lot out of this episode. Jason does a deep dive on asking the right questions for your fundraising event regarding auction items, donation items, the whole nine. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hey, everybody. It's your good friends, Trevor and Jason. Thanks so much for tuning in. Jason and I were talking, and we're framing this episode in a really cool way. We're going to talk about a few things, but basically answers. How do you arrive at the right answers when it comes to your fundraising goals? And I hope I'm not sounding cheeky by saying this, but you have to ask the right questions. So, Jay, talk to folks about asking the right questions.
Well, this really kind of came up because we had a client recently, and they were talking to one of our team, and they were comparing trips for like one of our trips to somebody else's trip, and they were going back and forth. And while that's important, and I just told her, I said, look, if somebody's just kicking tires and trying to find the best deal on something like that, they're probably not a good fit for us. And what I mean by that, and I don't mean that, we're hoity-toity or something like that. That's not what I mean.
Yeah.
But if they're not asking the right questions at the beginning, then they're going to ask the right questions later. And it winds up there potentially could be a problem because they haven't asked those questions. And so I'll give you another example. I was talking to an auctioneer the other day, and as a former auctioneer, retired auctioneer, I said, it's funny. There's two questions everybody always asks. The first one will be, are you available? And the second question, what do you charge? And I found that ironic because, quite frankly, those aren't the questions you need to ask. Availability, obviously, just to do that. But before you even ask, how much somebody charges, you also need to know, have you ever done this before? What's the most items? When's the last time you did a charity auction?
Yeah.
Do you do a normal, because there's a difference between doing a pie auction or doing an auction 20 years ago and doing it today. Have you ever sold consignment? How do you work with this? How do you do, what's the most expensive item? What's the most have you done? Have you done a live ask, a paddle raise? What other things have you, seen or done? Or you got to just start asking those questions. And, do you have people that are going to come work with you? Are you going to bring your own bid spotters? Or those are things that you need to start asking because they're going to come up later on. And if you've already got somebody committed and you don't know what they've got to do, you're kind of stuck.
Yeah. So we're talking about with auction items, with making sure you get the right fundraising auctioneer. We're going to get into donation items as well, but we're just talking about setting the table by asking the right questions. Let's back up real quick, bro, to auction items and making sure we have the right fit for, let's say, the live auction. What kind of questions, what kind of things?
Here's the thing, that it doesn't matter whether it's a donated item or it's an item from a company like ours, consignment, something like that. These are the same things that you need to ask.
Yeah.
Number one, does anybody want it? If you live in the Manhattan and somebody donates a rototiller, how many people are going to say, "Ooh, man, I want to bid on that rototiller"?
But it was donated, you know what I mean?
But it's donated, it's got to be appropriate. Yeah. And I think this is really important that, you ask those questions. Let me give you another example on a donation side. So, Mark, one of our guys, had an organization, and this guy donated a brand new HVAC system, heat and air system.
Yep.
And so he was asking me about it, and I said, well, the problem is somebody's going to buy that, and then they're going to go get it. The gotcha where they're not going to know is if they don't install it. And he goes, that's a great question. So they went back, talked to the person donating it, and said, would you donate the installation as well? And he said, yes, within certain parameters. It had to be on the first floor, certain things they would do, and they donated it. And they did the full thing. So it really clarified because they asked those questions. What's it going to be like for the donor to go ahead and get this? If somebody buys it, what's it going to be? And then, what's going to be my obligation afterwards? So,
So I'm
some of these,
I'm going to back
yeah,
up. I'm going to go number one. Is it desirable? Is it something that folks want?
yeah,
Number two, is it going to make us money? And when I wrote down, when you said, is it going to make us money, net dollars, I always remember what you say about remember the math. Let's
yeah,
work
it's always
backwards.
the math.
How much are we trying to raise? Number three, how much work is it going to take? I want you to double click on this for the audience. How much work is it going to take to fulfill this item, whether it's a donation or not? Or let's talk about both. How much
Well,
work is it going to take on our end as the organization?
It really, because sometimes if let's just talk about donated items, or maybe something that you put together. Because, maybe somebody has a house and then somebody's got some points they're going to put up. And, there's somebody said, hey, I'm going to give a dinner card and we're going to get all this stuff. Well, let's say that you have the event, it sells, brings some good money. And then 6 months later, the person calls, says, hey, I want to wrap that trip up. Well, now you've got to change whatever it is you're doing and you've got to go put that together. You've got to make sure that, did we have the points? Yep, there's the points. Okay, so-and-so said just to call him whenever you want that done and he'll get the ticket booked. Well, he's out of town. I can't get that done. I got to wait till he gets back. The weekend that we're trying to get, these people want to go, the donated house is not available. All this kind of stuff, it becomes an issue. And you just have to, it's okay. Sometimes it's really simple. I've got some friends that donate a place at their lake house. It's a 5,000 square foot lake house. I've been fortunate enough to stay there, and they'll donate, and it's as easy to deal with as anything I've ever seen.
That sounds like an outlier situation, though. That sounds like
but it is. So I'm going to tell you how things can go sideways. So we had a client where they had someone who donated a villa or a house. I think it was in New Mexico. They sold it 3 times. It was donated. The guy donated it to keep selling it 3 times. Brought $10,000 a piece. Huge deal. 30 grand net money.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
They fulfilled it. First week, the first person, that asked to do it, they got it booked. Came up to do the second one. Guy said, sorry, I sold the property. Can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not, hey, let me see if I can figure this out. Just sorry, it's not going to happen.
So now
they're scrambling. Well, but my point is, because now they're scrambling around trying to figure out how to take care of this because they've got somebody that paid $10,000. They don't want to give the money back.
Yeah, you got $10,000
because that's not the best.
With some expectations too.
Yeah, and so all these things you've really got to ask the questions. The questions are, for one, is the top 20% going to want to bid on it? Because that's where the money's at.
Is it desirable? Yep.
Or is it something that everybody can afford and want to buy?
Okay.
Number two, is it going to help us get our goal? And the net, it's kind of back to the rototiller thing. It's going to sell for $1,000. Well, yeah, it was donated, but we've only got time for 4 auction items and we need to raise 35 grand. So I got a rotor, you know what I mean? It's just, you've got to think about how am I going to get there?
Yep.
Exposure.
How much work is it going to take to fulfill, like you said,
our
exposure? But we're pro donation item.
Oh yeah. No, I'm not trying to knock donation, but I'm just saying, ask the questions though.
Yeah. Good call. What's a better way to use an item like that where you can still raise a tremendous amount of money, but the expectation, like maybe you didn't get like a $10,000 level, bid, but you could use a donation item like the villa in New Mexico where the exposure to the nonprofit and the expectation to the donor is not as high. How could you take something like that?
I mean, it just depends. I mean, it's just it's hard to give a singular answer, not knowing all the things that go into it because, we had an organization a few years ago that I helped out that had a beautiful, this really unique, custom ring. It had a retail value of about $8,500. Mm-hmm. It was never going to bring that at live auction because it was it was unique. And what I mean by that, it's just not broadly appealing. And jewelry's really tough anyway. So in this case, they took the donation, made it a golden ticket item, sold tickets for $200 a piece. And, they sold 40 some tickets, but I mean, they raised $8,500 with it, or it was like $8,600.
Yeah.
Everybody was happy. The organization was tickled. The person that won was tickled, and the donor was tickled. So everybody wins in that scenario. And it's just asking the questions. Don't just say, oh yeah, I've got this thing. And if it's too hard and too complicated to go get the donation, just think about how difficult and hard it's going to be when you go to fulfill it. Again, I'm giving you an example of some friends of mine that donate their place, this beautiful place at Grand Lake, and they make it so easy. It's easier than getting something on Airbnb or doing that. It's just super, super easy. So in that case, you always want that donation because it's such an easy fulfill all the way around. They just make it great.
Yeah.
But if it becomes complicated and somebody goes, well, they can only go the third week of May or the first week of September.
Yeah.
Well,
Tight.
I mean, it gets really tough and tight, and all of a sudden you limit the amount of people that are willing to bid on it because they're like, well, I got to figure that out.
Yeah. Well, let me back up to what you said in your example, went exactly where I wanted it to go. As a matter of fact, we were talking about the jewelry piece, $200 tickets. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm just talking about exposure and expectation. It's like the person that won the piece of jewelry or whatever, even if it's a donation, a donated home, for instance, that villa, what have you, or the lake house or what have you, they're only into it for $200, right? Their expectation might be high, but they didn't write a check. They didn't pen a check for 10 grand, right? So that's helping mitigate any of those fires, because the last thing you want is someone that has that kind of capacity to get sour and have a bad taste in their mouth about not the item, but that's going to be a direct reflection on your organization.
Yeah. So, and this organization is doing everything they can to take care of it. I mean, they're like, look, we really want to make sure to take care of these donors and do that. But it's just a fact that, just asking the right questions. And back to my original part where I was having the conversation with one of my team, I said, if you're talking about whether something has a dinner or something, that's fine. But mainly is this something that your people are going to want? Is it going to make money to fit your goal? And the difference for us, for most things, when we work with organizations is, number one, we take care of everything. All they have to do literally is send us the winner's name, their contact information. We're going to reach out to them via our system. They're going to get an email and a text message that says, congratulations and thank you for supporting ABC Charity. Here's your information to take on your trip. It's going to have all the information. So if they have any questions, it's going to be there, a contact name, an email, and a contact number at our organization. And then they literally could start fulfilling the trip right then immediately. So we're talking within minutes of that being submitted versus waiting 2-3 weeks to get the information, 2 or 3 weeks to be able to get it, done. Just all these different things that can go on. And then there's a nightmare scenario where, this organization, I know I'm not going to name them, but they have a physical certificate that the donor has to book the trip, and then they have to take this physical certificate with them on the trip. And I asked somebody who I know that used to work there, I said, how many times did people get there and realize they didn't have that certificate? She said, all the time. It happened all the time. And I said, what did they do about it? She goes, there's nothing. There was no remedy for it.
That's rough. And you mitigate these things by asking the right questions early.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that, every company other than us is this. We're really good at it. We're the best. But what I mean that is asking these questions that really mean something. Back to the auctioneer question, are you available? Yeah. What do you charge? Okay, we can afford that. Put us down. What in the world did you just do?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to do all this work. You're going to do all, and maybe they're great. Okay. Maybe you got a referral, you saw them somewhere else and you already know this, but if you don't, you need to ask these questions.
Yeah. No question.
Because, they may be a great car auctioneer, but they get to your event and they're going to blow past everybody if they've never done it before.
If you're stuck, we're getting some really great feedback from the audience, from the pod, from the webinar as well lately about topics that you'd like to discuss. If there's anything that you'd like to discuss, or you're not quite sure what questions are the right questions to ask, just go ahead and visit hgafundraising.com and click on the resources and the free coaching button. You can sign up for a half hour, 45 minutes with Jay. You all can talk about questions. What are the right questions? Bounce some ideas.
I wanted to say, it's really typically we put down an hour, and it usually takes an hour. We usually spend every hour plus some. So I'm just letting you know, the time is there. And so because there's a lot of important stuff here, and there's no obligation to that. I mean, it's not like you're going to hear some sales pitch. Because in fact, I talked to a lady here a while back, and we were like done. And she goes, well, can you tell me about the trips that you guys provide?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that part. Yeah.
Yeah.
As we mentioned, folks, on a regular basis, we're very bad at self-promotion, but we're going to get
but I want to just come back to this. If you write these questions down when you're talking to somebody, and even on the donation, what's here's just some real quick things to ask.
Mm-hmm.
What's the availability? How long can we run this out? I mean, are you pending to sell this place in 6 months? Because if you are, that's not going to work for you. But, can we sell it more than once? Have you ever sold it before? What did it bring? Whenever a donor has it, we're going to set this up for them to connect with you to do that. And a lot of times people, oh yeah, just send me a text message. I'll take care of it. We want to please just say, hey, I really appreciate that, but could we formalize that up just a little bit? Come to us, we'll email you, we'll get this information. Because what happens is, let's say that you do this 5 or 6, 7 times. And then you've got all these things that you're trying to fulfill. And you should, I mean, these are good problems to have. Don't misunderstand. But if you've got some kind of a formal process, 1, your donor's going to feel a lot more comfortable. 2, the donor that donated the item, they know there's a process to go through and they're going to conform to it. Most of the time they just don't know. They're like, well, yeah, it's all over the place. If you say, look, I just need your this, I'm going to, here's how we'll send you the information. And they go, great. And just be prepared for that stuff. So by asking questions early on,
have that checklist ready to go. And if you're unsure, reach out to us. Jason will spend some time with you. Super easy to find us. HJfundraising.com. Click on the free coaching button. It's in the resources tab. Sign up for an hour. Spend some time.
Yeah, I love doing it. It's a lot of fun for me, and it's surprising. I'm not tooting my own horn, but I was talking to somebody the other day, and she goes, "I've been doing this for 26 years, Jason, and everything that you said." She goes, when you said it, it all came back to me, but I haven't been doing it for the last couple of years. And I was like, well, that's what my job is to
we end up talking fundamentals. We end up talking fundamentals more often.
It's blocking and tackling all the time.
Yeah. Good stuff. Hey, thanks everybody so much for tuning in. Jay, thank you, brother. Make sure everybody asks the right questions, and then do us a favor. Make sure that you're subscribing to the new Hey Nonprofits Raise More Money YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, leave us a comment, show us some love. We've also got the new Hey Nonprofits Raise More Money LinkedIn page. Give that a follow. It'd mean the world to us if you did. Thanks so much. Thank you, brother. We'll talk to everybody soon.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.
All right. Bye now. This episode of Hey Nonprofits Raise More Money is brought to you by, you guessed it, HGA Fundraising. They provide the most profitable auction items in fundraising, the perfect tools for your live auction, silent auction, online auctions, drawings, raffles, prizes for the paddle raise at the end of the night, the whole thing. Check out hgafundraising.com for your next event, the most profitable auction items in fundraising.